Good evening. I have 7 o'clock. I'll call the Land Bank or the City Council meeting to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Greg David,
Present.
Mr. Justin Smith,
Here.
Mr. Tyler Dean,
Here.
Mr. John Welch,
Present.
and Miss Emily Hamburg.
Here.
And you have a quorum, Mayor.
Thank you. This evening we have Mark Posen, Bel Aire resident and pastor, to lead us in prayer. Mr. Posen.
Thank you, Mayor. 1 Timothy 2:2 commends us to pray for our community leaders, and thank you for that privilege. Father, we thank you so much for Bel Aire. Father, we thank you for the mayor, for these council members, for the city administration and staff. Father, for the time that they give. Father, we know that also as they work in team and committee assignments, they're working with a number of volunteers in our community. We thank you for those who are volunteering their time for this community as well. Father, we thank you for those who are on our police force, our fire and emergency personnel. Father, we just, as always, continue to pray for their continued safety and protection. And Father, we just pray for the discussions, Father, that decisions, Father, that you would just grant your wisdom, your discernment, that the decisions that would be made would be betterment for those who call Bel Aire home. And Father, we thank you and praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please join me in a pledge of allegiance to the American flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is determine agenda additions. Are there any additions to consider? Probably some deletions, but okay, hearing none, we'll move on to consent agenda. So tonight's consent agenda contains minutes of the January 17th regular council meeting and as well as the January 30th special council meeting. Did I say that right? January 17th? Okay.
17th and the 30th. Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed. Authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Welch and a second by Ms. Hamburg. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next issue is the approval of the appropriations ordinance. So this reporting period includes one payroll period. The city council paid, or the city paid annual work compensation premium to KMIT in the amount of $55,419, which is spread across funds based on the number of employees in each department. This report also shows December P card purchases for the end of the year expenses.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to approve appropriations ordinance number 23-02.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Dean. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item 8, city requested appearances. So this evening, welcome Commissioner Pete Meisner, and congratulations on being selected to chairman of the 2023 Sedgwick County Commission. Thank you for being here and representing Bel Aire on the county commission. Please share with us what is happening at the county.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, city council members. It's good to see you all again. And Mayor, you guys have done a nice job, and it's an honor to be here. I am Pete Meitzner. I'm on the county commission. There's 5 of us, as most of you know, and my district, district number 1, represents this northeast quadrant of the county. And so we've got a PowerPoint that, am I in charge of that, Ty? Okay. So it's about, I'm one of those people like to know, anticipate, so you know what's going on. About 8 or 9 slides. So it's not one of those 25 slide things.
That's good.
Okay. Thank you. So we're going to hit the highlights. Me personally, I was elected to the Wichita City Council in 11. And then when Dave Unruh retired in 18, I was elected to take his spot in 2019. I was the vice chair that first year, and I've been the chairman 20 and 21. I'll just tell you, coming from the city to the county, I thought it was a lot of the bones of what a community is. You all build things, and the county just supports some of the infrastructure that you never need, the 911s or EMS and those kind of things, fire and all that. And so I was elected chair in January of 2020, middle of January, and I thought, okay, this will be all right. I'll get to make some speeches and stuff. And then the Chiefs win the Super Bowl in the end of January, 1st of February. They have a parade, and everything's good. And then this little thing called COVID hit, and years 20 and 21 were not what I anticipated to happen as the chair. We also served as the board of county health, which before was just signing off on grants for everything, aging, health, all kinds of grants, because the county again supplies health services. And all of a sudden we were thrust into that world, as you all were too. So 20 and 21 was more crisis management than it was being the chair of the commission. But all right, so what have we done as the county just recently? I think everybody can somewhat appreciate we've kept the mill levy flat again for a number of years. It's right around there, the 29.539. We did a slight reduction last year in the fire district mill levy. So the mill levy has been flat and stays consistent, although the value of properties, as you all know, goes up, and that's good if you're wanting to value your personal balance sheet. But with that comes the added cost of your property tax. Anyway, significant zoo improvements. If you've ever been out there, the whole front end of that zoo is done and accomplished. It was a 3-year project. It's now continues to be the largest, they say the largest attendance in the state as of every year. The Buford family donated a train that goes now around there. Some of you are old enough to remember the Joyland train. It's similar to that. And, but the Bufords did a really nice job of doing that. And you can, for $5, you can ride around, and it's been well accepted. We have approved, we did approve the funding for the Crisis Management Center or Community Crisis Center. We've got that on the budget for $16 million. Who knows exactly what it'll be, but we need to, we've held off on pulling the trigger on that just based on all of the mental health and issues that are going on, and the potential campus. Where would that be? And could this complement that as a crisis center? Again, for those of you who don't know, if you've got a family member or an acquaintance that's really got a problem, 24/7, you can take that person down to the crisis center for some real attention and mental health assistance. And that's elevated itself, I think, because of COVID. People really kind of loneliness elevated. We all have a level of mental health analysis in our minds, and the isolation of COVID kind of impacted others harder than it did some, including high school students, college, and young adults, and elderly. Okay, so with that, the 988 suicide hotline was put in July. That was a state. We're one of 3 911 centers in the state that handles 988 calls. If it's too busy in Topeka or Kansas City, those calls come to us, vice versa. It's really a mental health hotline. It's nationwide, and we're just watching the call volume. So far, it's been pretty helpful. So you have that. I would feel free to share that it's a real item and it works, I think. And then the next generation of 911 is basically converting a lot of old technology to digital, easier to identify cell phones, where they're located, things like that. So that's happened. And then, of course, we put in a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer this past year. One thing that you might note, I think is a little significant, is grants. There's so much federal and there's state grants, but so many federal grants and even nonprofit grants and all kinds of stuff. So we took on the endeavor to actually have a department of, we have a grant administrator that's very bright, and she has two grant analysts. They really spend full time watching grants and seeing whether it's eligible for all of us. And I think, Mayor, we've talked about that before on, let's don't ignore grants if they're available, even if it's a 10% match. That's better than, so, and Mayor is also involved in WAMPO, the local metropolitan planning organization. It's really more focused on transportation, but similar kind of grant stuff that they do. So, and then Recovery Connect, that's misspelled. All right. It's supposed to be Recovery Connect. We funded there's a group at Wichita State we funded as a result of the ARPA money. So Recovery Connect, you can see on the county website, it's really helpful. And you as electeds, if somebody's saying, hey, I've got this business or this nonprofit or this, but I'm hearing about maybe a grant, or how can I get assistance? If you refer them to Recovery Connect, they listen to what they're saying, and they will connect you to federal or state possibilities for grant applications. It's been very helpful, because if you're like me, I get calls and I don't know, they've got access to 20 or 25. They analyze your need and say, you ought to try it. They don't fill out the grant for you, but they show you, and then they have grant training if you wanted to. So we are funding that. That's for the whole community. It's not just for us. So you should feel free to look at that. Perfect audits. We've had some, we're very proud of that, in that that's very important, because when it goes to bond ratings, as you may know, the better your audit, the better. And so, and also the CARES money in 2020, and then the ARPA money after that. I recall, repeating mainly for your audience, CARES was meant to help combat COVID, and ARPA is American Rescue Plan Act. ARPA money was to help recover from CARES. So CARES was giving you, all the vaccines and all these things and paying for all that. That was to address the COVID, and then ARPA is to recover from it. But with that comes federal audits. I'm happy to report that we had a clean audit on the CARES, ARPA. We had, if you're a venue and wanted some money to, for instance, well, the biggest one would have been the Interest Arena, but even other venues that shut down, they were hurt. Well, everybody was hurt a lot, but they were really hurt. They just couldn't do anything. And so a shuttered venue was there, and then our ComCare, the Department HHS relief funding for ComCare. All those were perfect audits. Bond rating remains. We just received AAA, Standard & Poor's AAA, and Fitch. So that's helpful, even though interest rates are creeping up, but it helps if you're there. Next would be what we've done. There's 2,900 employees in Sedgwick County. That's everybody. That's sheriffs and ambulance. I mean, that's everybody. And you all went through this as well. The creeping of compensation and the competition between police departments and sheriff departments. We've all adjusted, and but what we've all learned is that if you had areas in government that were not compensated fairly in the public market, you needed to make a decision to help compensate or you're going to lose people. And so we reclassified 1,500 and then made pay adjustments as such. And probably the reclassification was long overdue. The focus on services that just a reminder that there's 20 cities within Sedgwick County, Wichita, largest, Eastboro, the smallest, and then everything in between. But you all are in that top 5, as you know, and you're going places and doing things. And it's really fun for me to be friends and a part of helping whatever I can to assist the growth that you've got. So, but meanwhile, I go back to the first statement about the bones of the community. We do the comm care, the district attorney's office, which you don't have to have DAs, corrections, obviously, the sheriff, 911, as we talked about, EMS and fire. So those are not visible to a lot of citizens unless you need them. But when you need them, you want 911 to answer and you want an ambulance when you need it. Some people have lived all their life and never had to use those services. But we as county government need to have that available for you all. We worked really closely with WSU to get that $51 million advanced smart manufacturing. That is a significant event. There was only 21 awardees out of 500 plus around the country. 51 million as a federal grant. Basically, the challenge was the Wichita area. We've built 20,000 planes, jets, passenger airlines. It's taken us 50 years to have 20,000 in the world market. 50 years. And now that Asia and Africa and others that have not been active in flying are now flying a lot, they anticipate that we need another 15 to 20,000 in the next 10 to 15 years. How do you can't just hire more people and have a longer manufacturing line. So for us to remain competitive in the world market, this 51 million will hopefully do a lot of research and how do we make these planes easier, faster, and quicker so we'll stay on the competitive edge in the world market. And WSU has done a great job of that. Then we also have a regional economic partnership, which is called REAP. Just by default, I'm the chair of that this year, but you all are involved in that. It's about a 10-county regional economic partnership. It's kind of one of those feelings that as we do better as a region, it's really helped break down some barriers to where we all work together. And then there's that last boulder. I don't know if you've heard of this company. It's called Integra. It's kind of a big deal. And so anyway, congratulations on to our whole region on that Integra announcement just happened last week. Infrastructure accomplishments, the North Junction, you all are well aware of that. Some of you probably get to experience cones and cranes, and cones and cranes are good for, there was a time where you couldn't see a crane in this area. So now we have cones and cranes. Amazon is a big deal. K254, I'm so glad that you all are involved in the K254 analysis. We've done a nice collective job of elevating that to the top decision tree of KDOT. And that's very, very, very helpful, especially with what's going on up here in this area and along the 254 corridor and obviously the traffic, but then the accidents. And we've done a nice job, thanks to you all, of elevating that. And I think that's going to happen. That's how North Junction happened. We all got on the same page. That's how East Kellogg happened. Everybody on the same page. And that's what's happening right now at 254. Amtrak, we've had some great news recently. In March, which is next month, we did get approved. We got the corridor from Oklahoma City to Newton approved as a corridor. That allowed us, as Kansas, to bid on the FRA, Federal Rail Administration, has a bucket of money. This federal money is kind of crazy. It is what it is. So we're all competing for it. But we will submit that bid along with Oklahoma Department of Transportation, and Texas has signed off. So it's a partnership because the route starts in Fort Worth and comes to Oklahoma City into Newton. We'll submit that in March, and hopefully in summertime this summer, we'll hear if we were approved. And there, every indication in my conversations that I've had a lot for years with Amtrak, FRA officials, BNSF, and now the DOTs are on board. We're hearing very positive that we should be awarded that. The significance of that is that on the capital cost to improve that route, 80% of that capital cost will be covered by this FRA grant. So instead of us leading up to this, we were going to have to split that whole cost with Oklahoma. Now, Kansas and Oklahoma will only have to split 20% of the cost of the capital. On top of that, there's always been this argument that there's not enough revenue to pay the costs of operations. In that scenario, Oklahoma and Kansas would have to commit to split to be liable for whatever the revenue shortfall would be. Well, this particular plan allows FRA, it actually allows Amtrak, if there's a shortfall, the first 2 years, 90% of that shortfall will be covered. It won't be burdened on the states. And then for the next 5 years, it goes down. So 90%, then 80, 70, 60. And after year 6, it's at 30%. And then year 7 on, then you have to eat it. The states have to come up with all of it. So capital costs, huge victory if we win it. Cost of service, great victory. Amtrak thinks that because we're connecting population centers between Dallas, Oklahoma City, Wichita, and thus Kansas City, whatever, that they think that the revenue is not going to be an issue on that. It's to be seen. So we're there. And then obviously Jabara master plan is there. That's 2 years. Yeah. April. See, this was just done in April of 22. That's a pretty interesting, if you're kind of a research geek, it's only 287 pages. It's easy, a lot of easy reading. But you all know, and I know Ty has been abreast of everything that's going on at Jabara. It's a growing thing. You've seen all the hangars going in, the expansion and the growth of WSU Tech is fantastic. The Webb Road corridor, it's all good. But in that master plan, I'll just show you this if you wanted to see the next. There, it's really difficult to read, but there's a overview of the master plan. I can't believe I didn't write what page that's on. It's one of those pages, one of those 287 pages. Okay, so on the left, upper left, is the short-term projects between 1 to 5 years. Red is 5 to 10 years or 6 to 10 years, and then long-term. But you can kind of see their plan. If you can read okay, so north is on the right towards the giraffe. So probably that red part at the bottom part, that's kind of an acquisition of land to expand and to expand. And what they want to do is kind of develop the east side of that. And because the west side is growing like weeds. And then you got WSU Tech up there at the north end, and they've got plans up there. So this thing is really got some life. And so if you're in each one of those little dots is a number in it. The yellow dots correlate to the yellow side, the red to the red. That's not it. This isn't it's just a master plan. So we have had contact with some developers and some interested parties that want to do some things more aggressively. And if they want to help pay and invest themselves, then obviously that can switch this airport plan. So with that, let's see. Oh, there we go. And then we talked about COVID earlier, 99 million in CARES money, and that's been spent and was audited and perfect. The 100 million in ARPA, I think about 90 million has been spent. It has to be spent by December 31st of 2024. So what we have chosen to do based on recommendations is to hold back to see what evolves out of the recovery from CARES that would be ARPA eligible. And so we're supposed to actually get a report tomorrow in our commission meeting about the status of ARPA. For instance, it also, let's go to the next bullet, transition of county offices to Ruffin. By vacating the county building, the court system, the district attorney, Mark Bennett's office, the juries, and then we have 3 new approved judges. So that building was no way it was going to be able to handle it. That was ARPA eligible for us to move out and to convert now that courthouse there. And if you're going to court, that's the only reason you're going to go to that. Before it was a mix of the public and pay your taxes and treasury, and you had jurors coming in, you had family feuds or any court activity, you had the DA, you had the sheriff. So now that is a true courthouse, and we've used a lot of money towards that. We vacated. We're over at the Ruffin building. Personally, it's proved to be really we're an office building over there, and on the first floor is public. Mayor got to tour it recently and saw we have a nice auditorium. You guys have a nice auditorium actually and so before before our county commission office is about this big, so it was not good. But anyway, so we've done all that. Again, it's now a courthouse, and let's see then. Finally, some regional initiatives. As some of you that know me, I'm big on these regional partnerships, and the state mental health hospital is the top. We're working hard with Topeka. Osawatomie and Larned do not work for our community in this area. We've got momentum going on to build a state mental health hospital here in this region. Jeff Easter is the second largest state mental health hospital at the county jail. That's not right. Mental health patients or inmates are waiting mental health analysis to either can they come to court. Those that are convicted or do they really go to jail or prison, or they need to have assessment. So he's housing about 60 or 70 people just ongoing. Some have been there over a year waiting their mental health status. So that's very important for our region. On the left, you heard the momentum of which now they're calling it the Wichita Biomedical Campus, but it's the KU and WSU looking to team together to do a campus. They want to do it downtown Wichita area somewhere. Many of you are familiar with Houston, maybe the MD Anderson and Rice University have been there for years and years. But more recently, Phoenix has done it in downtown Phoenix, and it's just a game changer it lasts for generations, because you've got students coming in, living mainly living there, and then getting their doctorate and then staying in many cases. So it's good if that pulls off. The crisis center at the bottom, I've talked about a minute. And then the social services hub is that's a big picture of the mental health and the homelessness. There's groups that are working hard on that. There's a lot of momentum going on positively. The business community, feels that there's, and I agree with them, there's been enough talk and enough studies, and now's the time for action in that area. And I think you're going to see that happen in 23 this year. So with that, that's us. Stand for questions. And if you would give us like $10 million, then I think we can accomplish all that.
I thought it was going the other way around.
No, it's been a joy to work with you all. And so thank you for letting me share a little bit of the state of the county.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the information. It's pretty thorough and more than I imagined, but so thank you. Appreciate it. And
Bet.
appreciate your services serving as chairman for a third time. Huh? That's great. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're not sure.
By default or something. Yeah. Maybe they said, well, you didn't get a chance when it was COVID, so we'll give you a chance this time. So, anyway, thank you. And it's good to see you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to citizen concerns. I have 2 cards for citizen concerns. And just a reminder to citizens on citizen concerns, we give you 3 minutes to speak. I set a timer. When the timer goes off, I'll let you wrap up, but we need you to kind of move along. A lot of people here tonight. I don't know if all of the people here are wanting to speak citizen concerns, but I only have 2 cards, so that's the ones I'm going to call on to start with. So first, I have Cheryl Bagby, and if you could please come to the podium and speak in the microphone and state your name and your address, and then you get 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening. I am Cheryl Bagby, and I live at 3901 Cozy Drive. I have concerns about the drainage and pavement project on Cozy Drive. The residents on Cozy Drive have elected to pass the drainage and pavement project, but in my eyes, there have been several inaccuracies in the literature mailed to the Cozy voters. And for $150 a month, that adds up to 20 years and $36,000. I'm hoping the little inconsistencies won't turn into larger ones. We received a paving petition, and in the said payment on Summerside Place and Tobin Drive, those aren't even on Cozy. They are at least 1.5 miles from the Cozy residents. One's over on Webb Road, and the other one, Summerside Place, is not far from here. We have 2 Bs on our petition. They both say pretty much the same thing, except there's a May 1st, 2022, and on the second one, there's a July 1st, 2022. On the back, there's a signature sheet, but it doesn't, if you should lose that off there, it doesn't have anything that says that it's the petition for Cozy, for the paving or anything like that. So I would like to suggest that a new paving petition be drafted with corrections, and for those wanting the paving improvements and the signature sheet be included on the part of the petition. We also received these in our envelopes. This is for the no vote. The professionalism of the little yellow voting ballot was in great contrast to the professional looking petition. The yellow ballot should have been the same size as the petition, with the name of the petition on it, a place for the date, a signature line, and a name printed underneath, the address of the owner. I received 3 of these, of which I have 1 vote. My neighbor received 1, of which she has 2 votes. Could not find the bid list of the pavement. I looked on the agenda for today, and Aurora Park has a bid list for the pavement, but I couldn't find one for Cozy, and I couldn't find one in my information that I received in the mail. The question I have too, is there a bid list for the drainage repairs? And I don't know where one would be for that. We were sent a letter on January 6, 2023.
Okay, if you could just wrap it up, we'll be fine.
And it was very confusing for me with a lot of mistakes on it. It says there were 8 signed petitions. I count only 6. Let's see. On August, we had petitions that were wanted by August 5th. Some were handed in early with no file date on it, and some were handed in 5 months late with the wrong file date on it. Thank you for listening to me. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Next, I have Vicki Shepherd.
I would have just soon given my time to Cheryl because she has hers all prepared. But I iterate everything that she has said. I'm Vicki Shepherd, 3821 Cozy Drive. There were mistakes and things, and it was very disheartening that this was supposedly a legal petition and everything. And one of my big concerns was, and I addressed that with the mayor right after we received these letters, my husband's name was misspelled, and he suggested that I call City Hall and speak to the manager and get that changed. Well, the next letter that came was still incorrect. So even if we'd have tried to sign the petition, it would not have been a legal petition because the name was incorrect. The other thing is, I tried to get this from someone up here at City Hall, but I never got a return phone call, and that is the original plat for Cozy Homes. When we moved there over 30 years ago, the plat shows Cozy Drive is a cul-de-sac or a dead-end street. That actually showed that original plat, that street was going to go on through and around, and I think probably end up going through part of Treetop or whatever. But I could never get anybody to get me the map so I could show it to you. But my question to this is, if you went back to the original plat, which, whatever, and you go ahead and pave this street, and if you decide to do that, what kind of more expense is it going to go to us as residents if you have to open that up and go on around? So other than that, it's just been a kind of a bad situation because of, like Cheryl mentioned, $36,000 in 20 years. That's a lot of money, especially for those of us who have lesser incomes because we're retired. So I thank you for your, attention, and I wish you would really kind of reconsider and take some of her suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other citizens that would like to speak to the council tonight? A lot of folks here tonight, so if not, I will move on to council member reports. I'll ask Ms. Hamburg if she has a report.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended the K96 Improvement Open House at WSU Tech on Thursday evening. It was good to see what the plans are to improve 96 between 135 and down to the Turnpike. The goal is to increase capacity and take away some congestion and improve safety and interchange improvements. That's, of course, going to affect a lot of us here in Bel Aire that take 96 probably multiple times a day, some of us. So the only thing I would encourage is they are having a number of outreach opportunities in addition to what happened Thursday evening. Right now, it's looking like the construction might start in 2026, but now is the time to get your input in and visit k96improvements.com. Not in 10 years when you hate the interchange at Webb. So just encourage residents to do that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Mr. Dean.
Mr. Mayor, I just have a few things. Hold on a second, I got my notes here. I attended the monthly Bel Aire Chamber luncheon. We had a couple guest speakers from Goodwill Industries. It was a great time to learn more about their organization. As many of us know, they have several retail locations, one of which, or their main facility, is just outside of Bel Aire on 37th. And Oliver. And it was just great to hear more about their mission and the services they offer. And so I just wanted to throw out the chamber will be scheduling a future facilities tour there, which is kind of a great opportunity for anybody really in the community that's interested to learn more about them. Or also, I'd suggest if you're interested in a volunteer opportunity, they're always looking for help. So definitely check out Goodwill Industries on their website. And then the second thing I had to share is an opportunity for some of the youth in our community with a program called Block Kids, which is a Lego building competition that is put on by National Association of Women in Construction, or NAWIC. They are holding a free event this Saturday, and it's free to register. It's for kids 1st to 6th grade. Although one of my friends is an organizer and said they would take kindergartners that love Legos too. But anyway, the whole purpose of it is really to give kids a chance to spur their creativity and interest in engineering and construction as a career opportunity. And that event, again, is this Saturday from 9 to noon. And to register, just visit NAWIC, which is NAWIC, Wichita, on Facebook. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. David.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did attend the CCUA meeting on the 26th of January. Pleased to report that we are still compliant to KDHE specs, despite the fact that the influent is still out of design parameters. But the manager and staff are doing a great job keeping us compliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along with Councilmember David and yourself, I also attended the CCUA meeting. Also want to share that our city attorney did attend the last CCUA meeting, and during the public comment shared an update with the CCUA board as to Bel Aire's progress in conducting the performance audit of the facility. And I really appreciated her coming and doing that. Beyond that, we talked about some options to improve and repair some pumps, which is a pretty common discussion item as we continue to maintain the plant. It's great to do. And continuing the maintenance program on our wells. And those were the highlights. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Welch.
I have no report.
Thank you. All right. Well, we'll move to the mayor's report. So tomorrow, February 8th at 9 a.m., the Kansas House is holding a hearing on HB 2150. This bill eliminates cities from having input into zoning developments within 3-mile radius of the city. That is not a good idea. Developers need to have some assurance someone will not do something close to their development that is detrimental to that development. So cities help keep those in line. So City Attorney Jackie Kelly drafted a written testimony, which I sent on to the record in opposition of this bill. If you've not noticed, we have finally gotten the North Fork stream cleaned out. This has significantly reduced the risk of flooding when heavy rains come. Hopefully we'll have some significant rain this spring. Unfortunately, these efforts may not get noticed when the floods don't come as a result of this effort. So thank you to the Bel Aire staff for getting this done. It's been a long time in the works. Maybe you've noticed that Los Cunados Mexican restaurant at 45th and Woodlawn has changed their name. They're now Los Compas. And they still have the same staff, the same menu. So please continue to patronize Los Compas and the Dollar General, as these two businesses will continue to be impacted by the Woodlawn construction. By the way, the Woodlawn project moved to Phase 2E, as you probably have noticed, and is attempting to cut through Los Compas's parking lot to go west on 45th Street northbound from Woodlawn. I actually observed a couple of cars doing that Friday morning. So just a reminder that this is illegal. You may be ticketed by Bel Aire police if they catch you doing this. I do know they have stopped some people cutting through the Catholic Care Center for the same reason. So please respect the private property rights of Los Compas. And if you're going there to patronize them, great. If you're going there to cut through the parking lot, please don't do that. You may have heard that Ty Lasher, our city manager, and I met with Congressman Estes and Katie Sawyer from Senator Marshall's office. That meeting was to learn more about grants and funding options for the many projects that Bel Aire needs to address. Both Congressman Estes and office and Senator Marshall's office gave us some helpful leads to pursue. I also discussed these issues with Senator Moran's staff on a separate phone call. On Wednesday, January 25th, I met individually with each member of the full Bel Aire representation in Topeka. This was a first for of the few local law government days events that I have attended in the past. These meetings included Senate President Ty Masterson, Senator Carolyn McGinn, Representative Patrick Penn, and Representative Casey O'Hobson. We talked about the Bel Aire legislative priorities with the hopes to see some adopted in the current session. So on Thursday, the 26th, I also attended the CCA board meeting. I won't repeat what Mr. Smith or Mr. David said, but Mr. Tony Keentz, who is the utility manager, has been able to fill both open positions with candidates who look like they'll be a great fit for that team. So that's a good win for the CCUA. So also on February 2nd, I attended the Kansas 96 open house, K96 open house project that Ms. Hamburg had spoke about. The only thing I would add to that is please review that. They're looking at some divergent diamond interchanges, which are kind of cool. If you've been up in the Kansas City area, they have some of those interchanges. They're much safer than the cross interchanges that we do today. They're actually cheaper to build, which is kind of surprising. They're looking at that. This is all in high level conceptual stage right now, but they significantly reduce T-bone accidents and head-on crashes, which are what causes most injuries and deaths and crashes. So that's a very cool concepts. So please go to that website and see what they have to offer there. So I'll now ask our city attorney for her report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do think you covered the House Bill 2150 well. We're just watching it. That's about as close to the city being able to influence the development near our boundaries as you can get. I mean, it's completely and very directly eliminating that ability. We did have the county want to allow some sort of development near Northwest Bel Aire at one point, and we were invited to comment and weigh in, and that development didn't go in. So it is a useful tool, and we'll be watching that legislation. So
Thank you. Mr. Lasher.
Thank you, Mayor. Just had a couple important dates for citizens. The citywide garage sales have been set May 4th through the 6th. And on Saturday, April 29th, the weekend before, the shredding and recycling event has been set. So that was all I had, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you. So we'll move on to ordinance resolutions and final actions. And the first item is appointment of both Hildy Yops and Sylvia McCombs to serve on the tree board. They've already served there for several years, and they volunteer their time to educate citizens about proper tree planting and care. Their work has contributed to city being designated as Tree City USA by the Arbor Day Foundation. So we've held that designation for probably at least 10 years, not longer. Isn't that true? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I asked Sylvia and Hildy for a 2-year term, and they both said yes. So I appreciate your confirmation of those appointments.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Hamburg.
I make a motion to approve the mayor's reappointments of Ms. Yops and Ms. McCombs to the tree board for 2-year terms. Their new terms will expire on March 1st, 2025.
I'll second.
A motion by Ms. Hamburg, a second by Mr. David. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Move on to item B. So the Sedgwick County Commission acting as the Sedgwick County Fire District Board, created the Sedgwick County Fire District #1 Steering Council. So this composition consists of 9 members, with 1 being from the city of Bel Aire. So the term will be for 4 years with a maximum of 2 years, or 2 terms. When we reached out to our staff, and we reached out to the Chamber of Commerce and announced the opening at several council meetings. No one contacted us, so I'm volunteering to serve unless another council member would like to be appointed. And if no one wants to, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
appreciate you being willing to do that. I think you'll be a great addition to their board. I'd like to make a motion to confirm Mayor Benage's appointment of Jim Benage to the Sedgwick County Fire District Number 1 Steering Council representing the city of Bel Aire.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Welch. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next item is accepting the paving position for Cozy Drive. And just to give you a little background, we've heard a couple of citizen comments this evening. And so in light of that, I would like to make sure that we do a good review, make sure we're on solid legal ground for this. If there were errors in those petitions, I don't know. I don't have personal knowledge of this stuff. So, but I would like to not have petitions that are not appropriate. Is that a reasonable thing to do, is to table this until we can have a chance to review that?
Our bond counsel, Kevin Cowan, is here. And so he can answer those questions and give you some legal advice on that.
Okay, Mr. Cowan?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The two things that I want to address were mentioned earlier. The Cozy Drive petition did reference Summerfield Drive in addition to Cozy Drive as the paving project. And then the paragraphs, there were two paragraphs B, which might be more of a concern, but they basically were repetitive. They both had an estimated cost of $465,000. So clearly Scrivener's errors, the estimated cost paragraph, the $465,000, I think you can feel comfortable that there's nothing confusing about that. The estimated cost is $465,000, even if the paragraph was repeated. The Summerfield Drive reference, again, from a legal standpoint, I think you can rely on it. The statute requires that the petition have a general and not specific description. Summerfield is nowhere near that area. There was a lot of communication about what street would be paved, and it's Cozy Drive. So I would view that as a Scrivener's error, is what we call that. And then the other thing I would mention is if you accepted the petition and proceeded to try to improve Summerfield Drive, there's no benefit to the properties on Cozy Drive. And that's further evidence of Scrivener's error and that you could proceed. The resolutions that I drafted don't have Summerfield Drive. It just authorizes improvement of Cozy Drive. Only one estimated cost paragraph at $465,000. So if this proceeds this evening and you accept the petition, the resolutions would not have any of that Summerfield Drive information or an extra estimated cost paragraph. And again, I think your options are, you treat this as a Scrivener's error, clearly inapplicable. It's not an improvement that benefits the properties that are listed there. You couldn't rely on the Summerfield Drive description and proceed with an improvement of it. So that's option one, rely on those things. Then option two would be to recirculate the petition and remove that paragraph. And as I said, the estimated cost was $465,000. It just happened to have the paragraph twice.
So help me understand a Scrivener's error. Kind of explain that to us,
Just
so
the
we know what
drafter's
that
error.
is. Just a
the
mistake.
drafter made-
And
yeah,
what's
made.
the impact of a drafter's error like that? I mean, I know you said it's kind of moot in that you can never would never do that, but is that an issue that would be a subject for challenge or any other legal matter?
I don't believe so. And Scrivener's error is kind of a term of art in the legal practice, that it's an inconsequential error. It wasn't intended
Mhm.
to have any consequence, and it's just an error in drafting.
Okay, very good. So, knowing that, any questions for Mr. Gowan?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. David?
what about the original plat comment? Is that also mute?
Well, I think that was, and I was looking at the plat when the comment was made. It does appear that that street just sort of stubs there. And I think the question is, well, what if something changed in the future and there was development to the east? Would Cozy Drive continue on? I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know in terms of platting, if something like that happened and there was a replat of that property or platting of that property to the east, whether that would be a cul-de-sac and then, maybe there's access from 37th. I mean, I just don't know. I do know that if it continues on, that to the extent there would be improvements and additional assessments, if it's still you or a future governing body, would have to make a finding that the continuation of Cozy Drive to the east benefits this property or these properties that have already paid for their street improvement, and you deal with that fairly frequently on other developments. And so I guess in my view, it's unlikely that if that continued, you'd have a situation where you'd want to assess the property that already had an improved street. And frankly, whether you could assess it, you'd have to make that determination as a governing body. Is that equitable? Is it fair when that part is paved and now we have a new part and we want them to pay for that as well? So I don't know if that answers your question. Some of it is just speculation about what might happen in the future, and I can't answer that. But I think you'd have some real limitations in determining their benefits to these initial properties if the road got paved further to the east.
Seems to me that would be an extremely odd thing to even try to do, to assess those properties with additional development needs. That doesn't make sense to me, but.
Right. And this is consistent with what the city has always done, which is if your street is being improved and paved for the first time, that there's benefit and assessments, but sort of future improvements aren't typically anything you would try to assess. Again, it's speculation. You'd have to sort of see the plat and wonder how this might play out. Is there another access to 37th? And so I don't know how that would work, but I think today just paving and these lots all have frontage on this street, and so there's clearly benefit to them, comfortable with what would happen today and then in the future. I do think it would be difficult to find benefit to these properties if they've already paid for their paved street.
That makes sense. So I appreciate that. So just a little more background information on this. The city did hire Garver Engineering to determine the best solution to upgrade the gravel road and remedy several drainage issues in the Cozy Drive area. And that letter and petition went out to the property owners in the benefit district last year. And part of that is the city pledged $100,000 towards the project to reduce the cost of special assessments to roughly $160 per month, but don't quote us on that because that's subject to the actual cost of the project. But the $100,000 is what we've committed to as a means to compensate for delayed maintenance of those drainage ditches. I believe this will be a significant improvement in the drainage for the area, although it hasn't been designed yet. But that is the purpose of doing that, to get it designed and to get it done so that they don't have their flooding, because I know there are some of those properties that get flooding quite frequently just because of the problem with drainage now. So this would help solve that issue. So knowing all that, what is the council's wish?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith?
there was one other concern that was brought up in terms of the date that one of the petitions was returned. Do you have any concerns with that?
Was that brought up tonight? I missed
Yes.
it, or in terms of when it was
It
presented?
was signed and presented back past the deadline. Is what the comment was.
Yeah, well, not sure about the deadline, whether that was something the city was setting, just, we want these back so we can proceed or not proceed. I think legally, it's clear under the statute that there's no limit to that. And once a petition is turned in, it can't be retracted once the governing body starts considering it, or 7 days, whichever time period is less. So again, a deadline for turning it in is not a statutory thing. That I view that as more of an administrative thing. If we don't set some date, we could be trickling into future months and future years wondering whether this would proceed.
So you've reviewed all the petitions and you have no concerns from a legal perspective about accepting the petitions as presented?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Dean.
One of the other concerns I heard a citizen bring up was the sheet that was used to kind of tabulate the budget. Just kind of looking through the packet, it kind of almost looks like just the same sheet got used twice for the purpose of budgeting for the expected line items. Obviously, this isn't a bid. We'll have to take a bid. So I want to point that out for anybody that's listening or in the audience. But so the first question is, do you see any issue with that from a budgeting standpoint, having that distinction? And then secondly, I know we've talked about how this is not just an improvement to paving, but that the city is chipping in some money to help cover the drainage portion of the cost. I see those line items are listed. There's a couple of storm sewer items listed. So I just wanted to differentiate that too.
Yeah, as to the first question or concern, the statute requires that the petition have an estimated cost, which that budget sheet, or if there was more than one, that's sort of building towards what that estimated cost is. So I don't view that as part of the petition or part of the legal requirements for the petition. It's just informative if it's presented as part of it, and maybe the background of how we got from A to B on the estimated cost. And then your question was making sure that drainage was included as part of the project.
Yeah, it looks like there's items listed clearly to improve the drainage, and below there's a city contribution of approximately the amount that the city would be committing to cover those. It looks like to me. So I just wanted to point that out, that's
Yes.
kind of being tabulated in the budget.
Yes. And that's in the petition as well as the proposed resolution that might be considered later.
Yeah, the only other technical question, and this might be for Ann, is kind of what the residents of Cozy can expect of what that drainage would look like. Will there still be ditch drainage associated with runoff from their paving, or is there intended to be inlets? I know it's not been designed yet, but kind of from your perspective, Ann, what would that look like?
Unfortunately, I was not involved in the petition preparation, so I'm not sure what the estimate held. Knowing that area, my guess is it would be curb and gutter, but please don't hold me to that because I have not been involved in that preparation.
That makes sense. And kind of based on this budget sheet, that's probably what I would expect, but I wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
I
Smith.
was thinking at one point we had Garver kind of do a design for those areas and prepare what potentially that could look like as they studied Aurora Park and Cozy and the Hillcrest Street. And I was remembering as open ditches, but I could be remembering that as incorrectly.
I think we had a mix, and the Cozy Drive was going to be gutters, but Aurora Park was going to be ditches because it was one huge project at first, and now we've kind of funneled it down into separate projects.
Yes, and that's correct. The estimated sheet states Cozy Drive curb and gutter estimate. So it would be curb and gutter.
Thank you for the clarification.
Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Hamburg.
So I came on council after this had been workshopped the prior year. And I had some initial reservations just philosophically about kind of the tyranny of the majority. You know, I don't question that we have the statutory power to do this. But thinking about this over the past 6 or 7 months, it's hard for me to get comfortable with the idea that because a majority of your neighbors say you need to pay $150 a month for the next 20 years, simply because a majority says so, makes me uncomfortable. Now, I'm also sympathetic to the other side that we have these issues, and how do you resolve this when you have people using a shared resource? So I think chewing on this, I think considering our discussion back in October, I'm having trouble getting comfortable with this, even if the petitions were perfect. So that's just my thought at the moment.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I'm not happy with the petitions, but I think once we get past the petition, if we actually pass the resolution, at that point, the petitions really aren't that important. Is kind of how I view this. I mean, we've got the people that live there basically said yes. Whether we've got it in perfect writing or not, I think it's okay. I wish it was better, but I think it's okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
the way I'm thinking about this is, we've been presented a petition. The process that the state statutes lays out has been followed to the satisfaction of our legal counsel. I personally feel that we now have an obligation to move forward with it, and so I'll be supporting this.
Good.
I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to accept the paving petition for Cozy Drive.
I will second.
I have a motion by Mr. Welch and a second by Mr. Smith. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to
Dean.
point out that I will be supporting this for the simple fact that we did run the process, and that was something that we had an expectation of ourselves to do. And 7 out of 10 lots voted they want it. So to me, that's, or 7 out of whatever the total number is there, more than the majority, not just 50-50, are supporting this. And so that's why I'll be supporting it.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll go for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. Excuse me while I take a note. Okay. Move on to the next item is accepting paving petitions for the North Parkwood and 40th Street in Aurora Park. So as with Covey, Garvey Engineering looked at the gravel roads and drainage problems in Aurora Park, and a letter and petition were sent to each property owner in Aurora Park last year that detailed the work to be done, engineers' estimates, and how special assessments work. The city did not receive the required number of return petitions for that project to move forward, so that process ended. In December of last year, several neighbors asked if the portion of the roads in Aurora Park could create a benefit district and still have the improvements. Garver stated that this could occur and created a new district consisting of 22 lots with petitions. Those petitions were circulated by homeowners. And the city pledged $96,000 towards the project as compensation for delayed maintenance of the drainage ditches. So this reduces the cost of special assessments to roughly $160 per month per lot. And so Mr. Cowan is here to answer questions about this petition as well, if there are any questions for Mr. Cowan.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I would like to make a motion to accept the paving petition for the paving petition for North Parkwood and 40th Street in Aurora Park.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Welch. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Dean.
I'd just like to point out on this specific issue that I think the process worked. I remember the last time we revisited this as Aurora Park, and you kind of summarized it beautifully, the history, that I voted it down. I wanted us to let the community of Aurora Park decide when they wanted paving, and a part of that community made that decision to move forward. And so I commend those folks that stepped up in that area and decided that they did want it and they did want to pay for it, with the city's commitment to aid in the storm sewer. So just wanted to make those thoughts known.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Amber.
Just putting aside, I've already stated my philosophical concerns. One thought I had on this was we currently have a task force in Aurora Park kind of looking at issues. One thought I had is, should we let that process play out before we turn around and do this? And the second issue being, the petition went out for the entirety of Aurora Park. And this feels like we're cutting it up, we're changing it along the way. I had kind of envisioned if we went down this path that we would not just turn around and do it right away. And then I have just a couple of aesthetic concerns just in terms of having it cut off there just south of 40th. I don't know that I feel too deeply about that, but those were some of my additional concerns in addition to kind of the philosophical concerns.
This was truly a citizen-led issue. I think, and I wasn't even aware of who the players were until late into the process. But I understand that one of the citizens approached the city manager and said, "Can we do this?" And he said, "Let's look and see." And this was after the original petition was turned down. So this is not something that the city, any staff or city council said, let's look at this. This was the citizens that did this, and citizens actually circulated these petitions. So that's a significant difference in the process from what the other petitions were. So, in best of worlds, that's the way democracy should always work, I think. But sometimes we have to be leaders and say, hey, we need to do something here because we got a problem. And not everybody actually sees that problem because they're not in the position that we are to see what's going on there. So, I get that. That's just how it happens. So,
Mr. Mayor.
yes.
I just want to make one more comment that I really do feel for these citizens, some of them that have double lots that we're adding $300 on a month to them possibly. So I understand the leadership perspective, and I don't want to undercut. People have talked about this for a long time, and it's like at some point, like you said, you have to do something. But I'm sympathetic to the people that this is going to be a real burden, and possibly they may not be able to stay here down the road when these go into effect. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to comment to Ms. Hamburg's comment about doing the whole neighborhood at once. I would have preferred to do that too. But I see this as part of the task force can now see what it would look like. And so maybe they will agree to this in a year's time, that they really want this too. So this would be a concrete example instead of just a hypothetical.
Any other discussion? We have a motion on the table to accept the petitions, and if no other discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
That motion carries 4-1 with Ms. Hamburg voting negative, no. So we'll move on to the resolution to determine this petition's acceptance has now been done earlier in the meeting. So this resolution are required to authorize the work and allow for financing. The resolution approves paving and drainage improvements for Cozy Drive, and the cost of these improvements will ultimately be bonded and spread as special assessments against the benefiting lots. Again, Kevin Cowan is here to explain the resolutions. And as I remember this, and Mr. Henry, please correct me if I'm wrong, these probably won't see these assessments for 3 years. Is that about right? I mean, I know you can't be held to that, but that's kind of the normal cadence. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, I can address that. So
Okay.
typically, this is the authorizing resolution. It gives you bond authority. With the bond authority, you can include it in a temporary note issue if you so choose. And the temporary note issues are typically 3 years, maybe a little more than 3 years. And that, I think, Mr. Mayor, is probably what you're thinking of. We get the temporary financing, it's the construction financing, you get things done. Notes mature at 3 years. And so leading up to that, you'll go through assessment proceedings, have the proposed assessment roll, notice, hearing, and then that leads to the issuance of the permanent bonds. With the issuance of the permanent bonds, that's when the assessments get certified and recorded. So you'd have final costs, you'd have the interest rate available on the bonds to build that assessment roll. So it doesn't have to be 3 years. It could be less than that. It really depends on how you finance this. But if it's included with one of your other temporary note issues, that's typically a 3-year construction financing period.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussion on this resolution?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Dean?
I'll make a motion to approve a resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements in the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings, paving improvements for Cozy Drive, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Dean, a second by Mr. Smith. Any last discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you. So moving on to the next one is a similar resolution for the upper portion of Aurora Park. And those petitions were accepted early in the meeting as well. And this approves the paving and drainage improvements, just like the previous one for Parkwood and 40th Street. It is 40th Street. Yes. My note said 39th. And I knew that was wrong. So, okay. So the cost of these improvements also will ultimately be bonded and spread as special assessments against benefiting districts. Any discussion concerning this resolution? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Dean?
I'll motion to approve a resolution determining the advisability of the making of certain internal improvements in the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, making certain findings with respect thereto, and authorizing and providing for the making of the improvements in accordance with such findings, pavement improvements in Aurora Park, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Dean and second by Mr. Welch. Any final discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. Move on to item G. So this is a Bayside Development looking to develop 120 acres in warehouse park containing 10 warehouses ranging in size from 80,000 to 230,000 square feet. And exact location is the north side of 53rd next to Epic Sports and about halfway between Webb and Greenwich. I understand the developer is here and could come to the podium and tell us about your project. Is he developer here for this project?
My name's Lou Rubelli, and I'm project manager for Michael on this project of these warehouses. In the past, I've done several warehouses in the Park City area, I'm sure you're all aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And we feel this is a good project for Bel Aire. And there's a big need for warehousing because of the e-commerce. And you can't find much in this town right now. There's only one individual that's building warehouses, and that's on 21st Street.
Yeah.
And there's really nothing to be had at this time. So I'm here to support him and to get this thing going. We'll do one building at a time, right?
Great. Well, it sounds like a great project. I actually audit some warehouses around the country, and so I see these things, and this is a great idea. So I like it. Great. Anything else you want to enlighten us about the project itself?
No, that's really more or less what the project's about. you have any questions for us about the project?
How fast do you think you'll build all these buildings? I know you won't do them all at once, but
No, our reality, you're probably taking about a year of building to
okay.
speak of. You know, you might get a little luckier if probably right now is the product, is getting the product.
Mhm.
I guess, you know, probably in your city, if you want a transformer for the Evergy right now, it's almost impossible to get.
Mhm.
So the building, the lead time on these are all going to be pre-engineered buildings, and the lead time on them is shrinked because of the economy and the interest rates. And so that's to our benefit. That should probably, where a year ago it was 8 months, or 8 to 10 months, but we're probably down to 6 months now. The biggest thing in this project is the civil side of it, to get all that in place. There's a lot of dirt work to be done here because it's a lot of contours in it. And we're using ASM Engineering as a representative for our civil side of that.
Okay, great. Are these metal buildings or,
Yes.
okay, not pre-stressed concrete?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Dean?
I was actually going to ask for a clarification on that. Are you guys planning to fully develop out the site with the utilities and the streets that you show before starting construction, or is the idea to phase the civil as you kind of are ready to build?
Phase it.
Yep.
What we do is we'll do the first two, we'll do the first building, and then once that's done, then we'll go to second. So we'll bring the road in probably to the first turn.
Right.
And stop. That way our specials don't eat us alive. And then as we get leases, we'll proceed one building at a time.
And then one other comment, John Welch, council member John Welch asked about timing. So in the agreement, in the packet that you can look up, page 128, it actually has a statement in a paragraph that says that the abatement could be revoked. And then it has some literature, and it says, upon the 5th year after the date of this letter, that Bayside Development has not constructed at least 3 buildings and achieved a capital investment of $40 million. So just to kind of point that out for anybody that was curious about that question, that's kind of the commitment that is being made based on the agreement.
Yeah, I neglected to say, this is the acceptance of a letter of intent to issue IRB bonds, and I should have said that earlier, and I apologize for not having said that.
Thank you.
That's it.
If I may, excuse me, thank you.
Are you with the developer?
No, I'm Sarah Steele. I'm with Gilmore and Bell. We're bond counsel to
Oh,
the
you're-
city.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
So I worked on the letter of intent that you have before you, and I just wanted to make sure, in addition to the item that Mr. Dean pointed out, that this is different from many of the projects the city has looked at in the past, that they are looking for basically a 10-year window in which to construct. During that time, they anticipate spending possibly up to $150 million for the construction of the buildings. This letter of intent then provides for 100% abatement for 10 years on each building. So the first building would receive a 10-year abatement. The second building would receive a new 10-year abatement. So this agreement itself could potentially stretch to 20 years.
Because of the phasing.
Abatement,
Mhm.
correct. So as Mr. Dean pointed out, during the first 5 years, I just put that in as something that would give you some comfort and some benchmark that they're not going to just wait on construction until year 8 or something like that. So during the first 5 years, they're comfortable that they'll definitely build 3 and spend $40 million on those 3. The other 2 aspects I might point out in this letter does contain your standard origination fee, as well as an administrative fee that will be payable to the city. After approval of some iteration perhaps of this letter of intent. We are planning on coming back to you in 2 weeks to have a public hearing. The typical IRB structure will have a public hearing and then ask you to consider a resolution of intent. To go along with that, we will be presenting a cost benefit analysis to you that's required by state law. And so that would be in 2 weeks if you want to approve this letter of intent. So it's not certainly set in stone. I would take your direction in negotiations however you choose. I'd be happy to answer any questions, other questions on this letter.
Well, I appreciate the clarification because I did not understand the phasing in of this IRB. So that was great. Thank you.
So one quick question, Mayor.
Yes.
A clarification on the origination fee. So as they are considering to slow roll this and each one's going to be its own IRB, they also understand, and I assume, that each one has its separate process and a separate fee. And I assume that's all covered in
One
this.
will be covered by an origination fee.
Gotcha.
That is correct.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
in our packet was the statement of policy on IRBs that we recently, well, maybe not so recently, adopted. But at one point in time, we had a separate IRB policy for speculative warehouse buildings, I believe.
Yes, we did pass a policy of that sort.
Is this IRB consistent with what we had laid out in that policy? I couldn't readily find a copy of it.
The speculative building policy, it had.
I think I understand that's kind of what this is. This is kind of a speculative building
this-
investment.
If I remember right, it had the first 5 years was 100%. The second 5 years was 90%
Okay.
on a speculative building.
So this is 100% for the entire.
Yeah, that
term.
was the request of the developer based on the amount of investment, number of buildings they were building.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Ms. Hamburg.
Yeah, back in June when we revised this, like I said, I don't love all of these IRB. I can live with IRBs, but what bothers me here is the tax abatement for 10 years. I kind of prefer us to stick to a consistent scale. The one I was looking at was just the one in our IRB policy where you start at 100% abatement and drop at 10% over 10 years. I think I would prefer to see that just for consistency. That'd be my only comment.
I think at the time we did the speculative policy, we weren't giving that good a deal on the other IRBs. They were coming down faster. So the 10-year 100% is better than what we were offering either way before.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
question for our city manager. I think what I understand is in the region, nearly all cities are doing 10-year 100% tax abatements for this type of project, and that we would probably be inconsistent with what's happening in the region and the competitive landscape if we didn't approve this. How does that compare with your understanding of what's currently happening in our local market?
Yeah, that's correct. Because honestly, when the developer had approached me about this, we had never done this before. It's just been an IRB for one building. And so when they were explaining it to me, I had not heard of it. And that's what Park City does. And so then I asked Sarah because she's the bond counsel for Park City as well. And I said, help me explain how this works. And so she's the one that kind of put it all together because that's what Park City does.
I appreciate that clarification and that additional understanding. I don't really like the RBA process. I think it adds a lot of complexity and confusion, but I also don't want Bel Aire missing out on opportunities for growth, especially as we look to kind of diversify the types of construction that we have here in Bel Aire. So I think I would support this as is for those reasons.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Dean.
There was a clarification. I can't remember who said it, talking about 90%, which I believe was a past policy. I don't know if that's correct. I'm just saying that, I guess, repeating that. There's a 90% number for the second half of the agreement, and then what's being requested is essentially 100%. So I guess my question would be, are we going to change our policy to match that going forward? Or are we going to need to redo this agreement to have more commitment from the developer to achieve kind of a happy medium? What is everybody's feeling on that?
I guess I may be mistaken, but I kind of thought we had decided that we were going to go with the 10-year 100% on every IRB at some point in the past, and we dropped the speculative building. But if somebody can find that it's still out there, they can correct me.
Yeah, I was able to look that up, and we did approve the speculative building policy, and so it's still available. And it was a 5-year 100%, and then the second 5-year was 100%. So it was 100% for 10 years, and it has not been rescinded, so it's still out there.
Okay, but it's 100% for both 5 years, not 90% for the second?
Yep.
So it's the same that we're giving everybody. There's
Yes.
nothing different about this.
Right.
Thank you, Ty, for looking that up. That helps.
I will make a motion to accept a letter of intent to issue IRBs and provide incentives for construction of speculative facilities, Bayside Development LLC, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Welch and second by Mr. David. Any additional discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Swellenberg.
I appreciate that clarification as well, because I just was looking at our general IRB policy. So if we are being consistent, I can support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. So item H is considering ordinance of conditional use of accessory apartment in an R1 zoning in Aurora Park. So at the January meeting, Planning Commission considered an application to allow for an accessory apartment to be placed at 4046 North Harding Avenue in Aurora Park. After hearing from the applicant, several citizens in closing the hearing, the Planning Commission discussed the conditional use request and definition of an accessory apartment in the zoning code. The site of the proposed structure in relationship to the density regulations of R1 lot and the concerns of those who spoke. After review, the Planning Commission voted 6-0 to recommend allowing the accessory apartment in R1 district for the exclusive use of the owner of 4046 Harding Avenue or guest as presented without conditions. So Julie Bro, the property owner, is here to answer questions, as well as our Planning and Development Director, Jay Cook, who is here to explain the conditional use matters. Any questions for either or both of these?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I looked through the report in detail. It looked like the Planning Commission was unanimous on this. The request makes sense to me, and I don't have any concerns.
Very good.
I will make a motion to accept an ordinance for conditional use, accessory apartment in R1 zoning in Aurora Park.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Welch. This is a roll call vote, so I'll ask the city clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Mr. Greg David,
Aye.
Mr. Tyler Dean,
Aye.
Ms. Emily Hamburg,
Aye.
Mr. Justin Smith,
Aye.
Mr. John Welch,
Aye.
and Mayor Jim Benage.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Thank you. Move on to item I. This is a quote for sidewalk installation installment project from west entrance of Central Park to Isley School on Woodlawn. So Woodlawn is an arterial street, and as such, sidewalks are often installed by the city unless a large landowner has agreed to pay for the installation. So when the Woodlawn project is finished, we will have a sidewalk continuous from 37th Street to Central Park. If we complete this little section, we will have it complete throughout the city from 37th Street to 53rd. So that was the logic behind doing this, to get that sidewalk completed. It was, I don't know why it was never done in the past, but it is. So, Mr. Cook, did you have something that you would like to add?
Just so, some concerns that came up as far as the HOA, and there's a sprinkler system throughout that part of the right of way. Each contractor was given an aerial map. They were also visited the site and were told that it may require some retaining walls, retaining footings, so to avoid erosion, things like that. If you've been on that side of Woodlawn, it is there's some contour to it. But they were aware of what was needed and what was required. So we took in 4 bids. Calvin Up was the one that we recommend that you all make.
Very good. So, just as a matter of record, you said that the contractors are aware that there is potential requirement for retaining walls, and
Yes.
they need to work with HOA on
Yes.
the sprinkler systems and whatever.
Yeah, and
issues
Ty and I have talked, and once we, with your approval, we'll get in the contractor that you choose. We'll get a member of the HOA in, and we'll kind of have a sit down and kind of express desires, needs, wants, things like that.
Mr. Mayor.
We'll make it a very open.
Very good. Mr.
Sorry.
Dean.
Didn't mean to interrupt you. You can
You're
finish.
fine. This is your show. I'm just here.
Jay, I just wanted to clarify on the retaining walls. Are you envisioning something like a higher curb might be installed with the sidewalk to accomplish
No,
that? Or?
I think what we were anticipating is to serpentine around trees and the natural contour. There may be an area where we have to build up a little sand and some compact fill in to make sure that the sidewalk stays level, and not have to do anything too goofy with it.
Sure. So something similar to what's on the south side.
Yeah, exactly.
And potentially maybe putting in some landscape paved bricks or something to
Something like that.
kind of handle it. And then secondly, I just wanted to comment that I have heard for years the sidewalk to nowhere. This is one of the most obvious ones in the city, obviously with it being a school. And obviously when Isley was built, that sidewalk was put in and it was never connected. So I'm excited to see that staff made this a priority and made sure that this is getting done. Obviously, this is a good safety improvement for our city. I love seeing, continuity throughout the city for biking and walking, especially for our younger population. So I appreciate all your hard work on it, and I'll be supporting
And
this.
it was also I think in my report that this is a WAMPO planned project of sidewalk completion. So it's something that needed to be done. I think, Ty, how long have we've been mulling it over for about 6 months now. So it's good to get it in front of you guys to make a vote.
Thank you.
Very good.
How wide is this? Excuse me. How wide is this sidewalk going to be?
It'll be 5 feet wide. It's about just about 1,025 feet long and then 5 feet wide.
So it's going to be wider than anything on either side, but
Right.
that's kind of what we want to go to, right?
Yeah.
For walking and biking.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hamburg.
Jay, when roughly, I know we don't know yet, but when would construction start?
Probably pretty quick. Calvin Op Concrete, they have a big crew. Obviously, they do a lot of work in Bel Aire as it is. So I imagine it would be very quick.
That'd be cool. While that street's kind of closed down right now.
Right. Now would be the time to do it.
Yeah. It's not really closed, but it's limited access just because of no through traffic. Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Dean.
I'd like to motion to accept the quote from Calvin Op Concrete in the amount not to exceed $25,700 for sidewalk installment project from the west entrance of Central Park Avenue to Isley School on Woodlawn, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Dean and second by Mr. David. Any discussion, additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Cal.
Move on to item J. This is the ordinance adopting codification of our city ordinances. So the ordinance are approved throughout the year, and the city's code book also needs to be updated. So the ordinance can, on the agenda, codifies all the changes completed in 2022. Ranson City Code was hired to complete the codification project and is here to explain the work. Is someone here from Ranson City Code? There you are. Evening.
Good evening, Larry Kleeman of Ranson Financial and City Code. I was here a few months ago, we were presenting the initial draft. Again, this is not only updating your city code, but also putting it online so it's easily searchable by the public, as well as city staff, city council, and so forth. So basically, it's in a complete state right now. We've been working with city staff, especially Jackie and I, in the past few weeks and months. I've been updating a few things, so I think she already listed in her memo. So it's basically ready to adopt tonight. You have an ordinance before you that would approve this city code as it stands. Once you adopt it, then it'll be finalized. You can put the link on your website. We'll provide you with city code books. And as part of the process, we keep it up to date as well. So whenever you adopt a new ordinance that affects your city code, Jackie or Melissa can send it to us and we can update the provision of city code that you've amended. And then at the end of each year, we'll send you paper supplements for your code books as well to keep those up to date. Any questions?
So just one curiosity, we just approved an ordinance earlier in this meeting, so that will be
Well,
in this
only if it
version?
affects the city code, like
Okay,
like
so
a lot
that
of
doesn't
the-
affect code. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a bond ordinance, if there's an annexation ordinance, those things don't affect the code. So
Okay.
we ignore those as far as the city code.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I can
Yes.
just say, this is a really great tool for the public to be able to follow along in a timely way. So when we do something like change the fireworks code or something that could impact the public, shortly within a few days of the meeting, the public can go online and read the entire code in context with the changes that we've made. So that's a really great tool that this council provided to the public.
Very good. I think that's great. I have always struggled trying to find anything in our city codes. Maybe this would be a great tool in that respect.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Hamburg.
I'm going to make a motion that we approve the ordinance adopting the codification of ordinances of the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, providing for the repeal of certain other ordinances not included therein, accepting certain ordinances from repeal and saving certain accrued rights and liabilities, 2023 City Code.
I have a motion from Ms. Hamburg. Any second?
I'll second it.
Motion from, a second from Mr. Welch. This,
Mr. Mayor, can we have one amendment that also would allow us to publish to the city website as well? I don't know that
was that not stated?
super
in
important, but
the original reading? Was that not stated?
No.
It's in my note here. that-
it is. Okay. I did
but-
not hear that piece. I just heard it.
I apologize. I read the wrong thing. Let me just state my motion. Make a motion to approve the 2023 recodification ordinance incorporating all changes as presented into the official city code book and published to the city website.
I'll second that.
Very good. Thank you for the clarification and amendment. All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote, so I'll ask the city clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Greg David,
Aye.
Mr. Tyler Dean,
Aye.
Miss Emily Hamburg,
Aye.
Mr. Justin Smith,
Aye.
and Mr. John Welch.
Aye.
And the motion carries 5-0, Mayor. And I would like to say thank you, City Council, because I believe this will be a great tool, as Miss Kelly said. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Moving on to item K. So this is accepting a bid for Bristol Hollows Phase 2 paving improvements. So the developer is ready to begin Phase 2 construction of paving improvements, and the cost of the improvements of this project will be financed through a bond and spread through specials against the benefiting lots. So Ann Stevens, our city engineer, and there she is here to explain the project and present bids and answer questions.
So this will be the second phase of the Bristol Hollows project. The contractor, Nowak, is nearing completion, still has a little bit more work to do on the water, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer improvements. This project will occur shortly upon completion of the utility work.
That area is getting a lot of development in it.
Yes, we are. It's pretty crazy.
One question for me. We've had problems with the land over there before being not suitable for certain types of building. Has that been checked before we put this in?
Yes, the intriguing thing with all of the problems that we had on the first phase, the contractor has run into very little to no problems on this phase. So
One spot.
hallelujah.
Well, that's good to know.
Geology.
Yes.
Any other questions or discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith,
I will make a motion to accept the bid from Kansas Paving in the amount of $515,245.10 for the Bristol Hollows Phase 2 paving improvements and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. David. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Move on to item L, delegate for alternate and a delegate and an alternate delegate to the annual meeting of the Kansas Rural Water Association. So the city is a member of the Kansas Rural Water Association, and as a member receives one voting delegate for the annual business meeting. Ann Stevens, our city engineer, and John Stamen, water operator, are currently registered to attend this conference. And I'm recommending that we appoint Ann Stevens as the delegate and John Stamer as the alternate delegate. And I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. So unless any council members are interested in attending this conference, which is you're certainly welcome to attend these conferences.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. David,
I'll make a motion to appoint Ann Stevens as the delegate and John Steeman as the alternate delegate to the annual meeting of Kansas Rural Water Association. Authorize the mayor to sign all related documents.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. David and a second by Mr. Dean. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Letter M, consider accepting bid to Land Bank of 2021 ending sales. It's not a bid. It's just the Bel Aire Land Bank 2021 ending sales and financial report. I think that was a 2022. I think there's a typo in here. So the Land Bank ordinance requires an annual inventory be taken as well as sales revenues and expenses be reported. Land Bank met prior to this meeting to approve the reports, and they are now on the agenda for council to consider. So action is simply to receive and file.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Welch,
I'll make a motion to accept and file the Bel Aire Land Bank 2022 ending sales and financial report.
I'll second.
motion by Mr. Welch and second by Mr. Smith. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item N, I think we wanted to delete this one from the agenda, but unfortunately, I don't think we better. So it is sad to report that Miss Jackie Kelly has accepted the position with the city attorney of the city of Derby. And I personally talked with Mr. Mayor White about this and kind of congratulated him and said, you're getting a great asset there. We're sorry to hear her leave, but we understand that as a career move, this is good. She has submitted her letter of resignation to me a week ago. City policies require a letter of resignation be submitted and accepted. So that is why it's on the agenda tonight, to accept her resignation. It would not be effective. Her last day would be March 9th of 2023. So she'll still be with us for about a month.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Welch.
I'd like to thank Jackie for all of her dedicated service and say I too am sorry to see her go.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to reiterate that she's always been responsive and personable and a real asset to Bel Aire. So I'm wish her well, but sorry to see her go.
But nobody's going to make a motion.
But I will regrettably sadly make the motion to accept City Attorney Kelly's letter of resignation dated February 3rd, 2023.
And I regretfully second.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Hamburg, and a second by Mr. Dean. And any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. So now we are ready for executive sessions, and it's just going to be a long night. Looks like we got a lot to talk about yet. And I apologize for that. I think we do need a recess, though. So I'll entertain a motion for a recess, and I'll let you decide what the time is, 5 or 10 minutes. But, tell me what you want.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion for a 5-minute recess with the open meeting resuming in council chambers at 8:55 p.m.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Welch for a 5-minute recess. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're in recess for 5 minutes. Okay, we held recess, and I'm calling the meeting back to order and move on to item 12. So there are two executive sessions on the agenda. And the first one, I'm asking for a 1 hour executive session and invite a number of people. And this expanded from an original request of 45 minutes. The second one is going to be for 25 minutes. So the first one, we need a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session for the sole purpose of discussing the subject of attorney-client consultation regarding contractual obligations pursuant to the KSA 75-4319 exception for attorney-client privilege. Invite the city manager, the city attorney, the assistant city manager, Keith Scarberry, Kim Lee, Brian Meyer, Sarah Lohman, Dave Naaman, and Jennifer Hill. The meeting will be for a period of 60 minutes in the open meeting will resume in city council chambers at 9:57 p.m.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Smith, a second by Mr. Welch. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. We are in executive session. Thank you guys for the reports and stuff. I know it's a lot of stuff, so I just same thing. Okay. Oh, good? Okay. We'll call the meeting back to order. We held an executive session and no binding actions were taken. And we'll move on to any motions we need to make. Do we want to move to the
Mr.
next
Mayor.
item? Mr. Smith.
I think executive session B is the next item. I'll make a motion to go into executive session for the sole purpose of discussing the subject of matters of non-elected personnel, contracted employees pursuant to the KSA 754319 exception for the same. Invite the city manager into this session. The meeting will be for a period of 25 minutes and the open meeting will resume in council chambers at 10:27 p.m.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith and second by Mr. Dean. Any discussion? I don't think so, but here none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Back in the executive session for 25 minutes. going to call the meeting back to order. We held an executive session with no binding action taken. I will entertain a motion concerning a special meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'd like to make a motion that we have a special meeting of the City Council on Thursday, February 9th at 6 p.m. in City Council chambers.
Can we do earlier than that? That works for anybody?
Works for me. I'm available all
5:30.
day.
5, 4, how early can everybody get here?
5:30 for me is probably the earliest.
5:30.
I can make 5:30 work.
Okay.
This gives us a chance of getting out of here before midnight.
Really? Okay, so I have a motion to have a special meeting on Thursday, February 9th at 5:30 PM by Mr. Smith. Does anyone want to second that?
Mhm.
I'll second that Thursday at 5:30.
Okay, second by Mr. Welch. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, so next Tuesday, the 14th, is our regular schedule for a workshop at 6:30 PM, but it is also Valentine's Day, so some may want to defer and do that on another day, have that workshop on another day, so I'm willing to entertain that. I am available Wednesday through Friday myself that week, and I don't know what the feeling of the council is, but
I think we just ruined Valentine's Day. We're gonna have a meeting at 5:30, so I don't think Valentine's Day plays into this at all. But
it's a different
I
day.
do
One's a
think,
Thursday, one's a Tuesday.
I do think we need a workshop, and I don't know what the best date is to reschedule that to.
Well, we're celebrating Valentine's Day this weekend, so if we had to, I could be here on Tuesday if that was the will of the body.
Tuesday works for me.
Yep, let's do
Is
it.
it good for you, Ty?
Okay. All right. So we're still going to stick with our regular schedule. Okay. Agenda is to discuss the 15 capital improvement projects and a brief discussion. I don't know how long it'll take to talk about Bel Aire economic development and putting together a marketing brochure. So got some ideas to share with you and see if you want to go that direction or if you want to do something different. So, okay.
Mr. Mayor.
How much of this can we get pre-sent to people so we're not? If you've got something you want to propose, can we
Well,
get a copy of
I
that?
can send, I can send some stuff. I don't have it put together yet. I have some notes, but I don't have it summarized, and I need to get it summarized for you.
And can Mr. Henry get something together on our capital improvements that?
Okay.
Okay, can we see his slides before the meeting? Well, I'm sure he'll explain it, but
Well, even a preview is that we just read through and then we can develop questions and then him make his presentation. Then we can ask him those questions if we still have them in mind after his presentation. So that would be good. Yeah. Okay. So I'll try to get something on the economic development put together for that makes sense. So, okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
On the discussion of future issues, one other item, earlier in our meeting, we approved the sidewalk to Isley, and it brought to mind, I noticed with the Woodlawn sidewalk installation on 45th Street, the sidewalk goes to where it almost connects to the other sidewalk on 45th Street to the west of Woodlawn. And there are two lots where the sidewalk doesn't connect with the existing sidewalk.
Oh my gosh,
So we
really?
almost have a sidewalk that full length of 45th Street, but we need two more lots of sidewalk to connect in there. I'd encourage us to look into what it might take to make that happen.
on the south side of 45th?
On the south side of 45th.
I did not notice that, but I've been trying to maneuver between the cones over there. So
Yeah, I thought last time I drove through there, it was clear over there to
Okay.
Hillcrest, but
well,
I'll have to drive
pretty
through.
easy if
It
it's not
goes
in
clear
the
to the
plan.
street, but then across the street, there's two lots before the next sidewalk starts.
Okay.
Oh, okay. It's
So we
not
need
part,
to
it's
look at it.
past the.
So I don't
improvements.
think I'm not sure that it was supposed to be in scope for the construction, but seeing it there and seeing that we have this really small gap where there's no sidewalk is something
Right.
that we should look into.
If it's
I
not in
agree
scope,
with
let's get it done. If it's in scope, then make sure the contractor does it. I just, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
That's a
good
good
catch.
point.
Either
All right.
way, let's figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Mayor, I make a
Anyone?
motion to adjourn.
So motion by Mr. Welch, a second by Mr. David. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Too bad. We're adjourned 5-0.